Hello, good afternoon, depending on where you live. We're assuming you're living somewhere in the afternoon, but if it's morning where you are, good morning. I'm Ted Rall. John Kiriakou is here too. We're the DeProgram show. Michelle Whitty's out this week. She'll be back next week, we hope and trust, although these days no one can trust or hope really in anything. Anyway, it's Thursday, April 10th, 2025. Thanks for joining us here as we try to deprogram you from all the propaganda and assorted BS that we're all subject to these days increasingly. There was breaking news even like 3 minutes ago, right before we came on, concerning Columbia University, which is just a stone's throw from where I'm speaking to you, John. I can walk on my hands and knees and get there. And it's where I graduated from. The federal government, appears to be entertaining the possibility of subjecting it to oversight, federal oversight, effectively seizing Columbia University, an Ivy League school. The details are not quite known yet, but the Wall Street Journal is reporting it. It's obviously something the administration is at least toying with. I'm gonna look at that piece right now.
There are very few things that sound crazier to me than seizing a university because you don't like some of the political positions that some of the students have taken. That's really what it comes down to. Here it is. Exclusive. Trump administration wants to install federal oversight of Columbia University. In an unusual move, the government is aiming to legally bind the school to changes as they negotiate over federal funding. So what the Trump administration apparently is proposing is if you still want the, what was it, Ted, $400 million in federal funding or some amount like that?
That's right. That's exactly right.
Then there will be no freedom of speech, whether it's among students or faculty. That's what this is coming down to. Stunning. I can't believe it.
I can't believe it either. It's another story we're going to talk about. This lawyer who was interdicted at the Detroit airport.
At the Detroit airport. Yes.
To me, I think of America. We think we're a democracy, but all societies have a caste system.
Yes.
And the homeless are at the the untouchables at the bottom of the caste system, but attorneys are usually a protected class. Multi-billion-dollar endowed Ivy League universities are at the absolute apex of the protected classes. Let's talk about Columbia. To me, the grotesque irony here is, aside from the fact that there's still yet to be proven one single anti-Semitic incident that happened at that school, which is actually kind of shocking. You would just think, considering that it's about the Israel-Palestine conflict, that there probably would have been some asshole kid who would have said something anti-Semitic. It may have happened, but it's sort of like the returning veterans from the Vietnam War having been spit upon by hippies. Mm-hmm. Maybe it happened, but there's zero evidence that it ever happened.
Right.
And there's no evidence. So maybe, I'm not saying it didn't, but it's kind of like, there's no evidence that the Easter Bunny doesn't exist either. But the irony here is that the university has been so one-sided on the pro-Israel side and so mean to the pro-Palestinian side that it's like, that's what's so weird. It's like, so the university had these protests. It was definitely ground zero for the pro-Gaza protests, and it inspired the rest. There were this big encampment in the Central Quad. By all accounts, mostly peaceful. The university asserted that there was some damage to Hamilton Hall when some of the students broke in. That's a proud tradition at Columbia. Breaking into Hamilton Hall goes back to the divestiture protests that I was part of in the 80s, and also back to 1968. It's just sort of like what you do, and it's not that big a deal. $30,000 of damage. Basically, it came down to some broken doors and some chairs, and some few windows got broken. They shouldn't have done that, granted.
Sure.
And punishment, I think, probably, maybe some. But anyway, the university came down like a ton of bricks on the Palestinian protesters. Jewish Voice for Peace and other. Think about it, Jewish Voice for Peace and other Palestinian voices. These groups were banned by the university administration. Students were expelled. They were suspended. Graduated students had their diplomas freshly printed revoked by the dozens. There were a lot of incidents of violence on the part of pro-Israeli students who attacked these. No, there was no sanction whatsoever against them. The university president at the time, Claudine Gay, was that? No, that was Harvard. I keep forgetting. This was Minouche. That's right, Minouche.
That's right. Yes, I remember.
She went up there to Capitol Hill, went to the McCarthyite hearing and she was asked to fire a specific professor for being too pro-Palestinian. She said, okay. And she did. Nevertheless, that wasn't enough for them. She got pushed out. But what's so baffling is, what do they want this university to do? Shoot these students? They called in the police not once, but twice on them to brutalize them and drag them out. They expelled them. They fired professors, not just one, several have been pushed out. Free speech has been obliterated. Basically, you can't speak about the Palestinian cause on the Columbia campus, or you're going to be in deep shit. They've even hired a new 30-person goon squad to supplement the normal campus security guards to crack down on pro-Palestinian protesters. This was one of the conditions of the Trump administration. It's kind of like, why are you punishing the university? The university is doing your bidding. That's the part that's so mysterious to me.
Ted, last night I went to this annual banquet party hosted by the Arab American Foundation, Arab American Heritage Foundation. It's in celebration of Arab American Heritage Month, which is the month of April. And every year they have this beautiful dinner and speakers, and then music and folk dancing. It's a wonderful event. So this year it was scheduled to be held in the auditorium at Amazon headquarters, Amazon 2, it's called, here in Arlington, Virginia.
Yeah, isn't that where that was originally supposed to be located in Queens, and then AOC said, no, thank you?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and doggone AOC, I wish it had stayed in Queens. So 48 hours before the event, Amazon sent a letter to the Arab American Heritage Foundation canceling the event. You can't come here. So when they called and said, what's up? We booked this a year ago. We paid for it. They said, nope, no discussion, no explanation. You can't come here. So in 48 hours, they had to find another venue for 600 people and then get all the word out that it's been moved. They ended up moving it to the banquet hall at the St. Peter and Paul Antiochian Orthodox Cathedral in Potomac, Maryland, which was a magnificent venue, but it's nowhere near a subway station. And so about 100 students from DC area universities who had bought tickets could not go. We had Rashida Tlaib. She came and gave a talk, and Andy Shalal, who's this beloved restaurateur here in the Washington area. He's got 8 restaurants called Bus Boys and Poets, which are progressive combination bookstores. Yeah, it's a wonderful venue, and Andy's just a wonderful human being. He spoke, and a couple of other people spoke, and there was a tribute to Kulthum, and then there was Syrian folk dancing, which was wonderful. But the point is, they were canceled and they were censored only because they're Arab, not for any other reason. Now, this organization has been around for 40 years, and it's made up of doctors and lawyers and engineers and bankers and all professional people, all wearing suits. They're all like, from 40 upward in terms of age. And they were just canceled only because they're Arabs. There were a couple of brief mentions of Gaza, but really the night was about, the contributions to American culture that Arab Americans have made, and that we've got to stick together and work together. And I say we. I'm not an Arab, but I'm certainly a supporter. And it was like any other black tie or semi-black tie event that you might go to. There was nothing controversial about it in any way, but they were canceled just because they're Arabs. Now, that was last night. Today, Columbia University, we're going to see a lot more of this in the coming weeks and months as the Trump administration gains more solid footing and comes to realize that there's no significant pushback.
That last part is the part that I wanted to focus on, right? I mean, this is a story we've seen before. I mean, like you, I love history, and I'm a student of World War II. My mother grew up in Nazi-occupied France, and
wow.
Cowardice is we saw that back then, although not nearly as much as here. I think about when Hitler came to power, he still had to contend with the socialist and communist parties.
That's right.
They had armed wings. They marched and they were militant. They had street battles with the Nazis in the streets. People would die. Obviously American politics doesn't do that. I would argue for the better, except maybe at times like this. But we don't do that. Where it's like, I was also reading about another law firm that just coughed up another $100 million in free, in pro bono work that Trump could pretty much cash in like a coupon for him or any of his friends who needs free legal work done. I mean, they basically just become wholly owned subsidiaries of the Trump administration. Was this is this a structural problem in American politics that we're not built for resistance? I mean, is that sort of, we just don't have...
I think it is, Ted. Mm-hmm. I think it is. And then, when you've got, for example, protesters exercising their rights to free speech at Cop City outside of Atlanta being charged with, RICO charges and facing sentences of life without parole, you've got a problem. When you've got a couple of eco activists in Oklahoma City going up to the balcony of an oil company's headquarters and throwing glitter to protest, shale oil exploration, and then being charged with terrorism, which carries a life sentence. Yeah, we've got a serious structural problem in this country.
I mean, so yeah, well, that's the oppressive side. That's the oppression side, which is way over the top. Yeah. But then, okay, so last Saturday there were some beautiful rallies organized by some Democrats.
The most beautiful rallies that have ever been seen.
Gorgeous rallies. I mean, honestly, it's good for people to protest. It's good for people to get to know each other. Get some fresh air, get some, get out there and walk around, maybe get your 10,000 steps in.
Yeah.
But really, what good is it? I mean, there's, those same people today, people are just like, oh man, even people who are well informed, they're going to hear this story and they're going to be like, wow, that's weird. And then it'll be like sort of like 1936 with the Nuremberg laws. Wow, Jews aren't allowed to go to the park anymore. That's weird. Yeah. Jews can't own radios anymore. Huh.
Yeah, and then they say, well, it doesn't affect me. So that's a they problem, not a me problem. Right. And next thing you know,
it's
all of society.
Problem.
That's right.
It's an everybody problem.
Sir.
I mean,
that's right.
I mean, I used to fantasize about these scenarios, and I think I always thought the only power that could ultimately bring a fascist U.S. to heel would be the EU through armed intervention. That's probably it.
But then you've got these elements of fascism within the EU as well. Look at Hungary and Poland and
France?
Is it Slovenia? France has an enormous far right.
Yeah, the problem is in France, the center left under Macron is acting like fascists by not allowing the free election of a possible fascist.
That's right.
So
that's right. You know, you look back to at the 1930s and 40s United States, we had far-right elements that were involved in politics. We had Huey Long, for example, or Father Coughlin. And you and I have talked about Father Coughlin in the past. And they were allowed to just sort of, you know, go on the air and hang themselves with their own words. Yeah. There was no move by the Roosevelt White House or by the Supreme Court or the Justice Department to try to silence these people. Why now? Why do we try to silence alternative voices now, whether from the left or from the right?
Well, that's obviously that shows the insecurity of the powers of the ruling elites. They don't think they're worried, right? I mean, they weren't scared about. I was the most reprinted cartoonist in the New York Times all throughout the 90s. I know this because my editor, John Landman, he told me, and I said, "Oh, how do you know that?" And he said, "Oh, well, we did an internal audit and we counted all the paychecks in an Excel spreadsheet, and you had the most of them, one paycheck per cartoon." I was like, "Oh, that's nice, you know." Like now, there's no way I can get into the New York Times. I mean, maybe if I'm arrested, I'll make it into the New York Times.
Yeah, exactly right.
But I mean, yet the spaces have shrunk. So, you know, I mean, if I'm a trustee of Columbia University, I mean, a lot of those trustees are, I mean, they've had a conservative, I mean, people think Columbia University is like a hotbed of radicalism.
Right. And it's not.
The students are, sort of, some of them, a quarter, but the administration, they're right-wing, corporatist, a lot of them very Zionist, and they've been pressuring people. But if you're a trustee of this university, if you have the smallest IQ, you've got to see that this is an existential threat to your university. I mean, to the brand. Like if you consent to federal oversight, already college recruiters are saying that people who were accepted to Columbia University are choosing to go to like smaller named schools because they don't want to be attached to the brand. Not because they're worried about being viewed as anti-Semitic, but because they just think the place is falling apart. It's becoming chaotic. I mean, you know, normally when the Department of Education subjects a school, like typically it's an inner city school that's in deep crisis. Typically a high school or a junior high school.
Yeah, people graduate and they can't read, they can't do basic math. That's right.
Right. Yeah, it's a as Trump would say, it's a shithole school.
Yes.
So so granted, I haven't set foot in a classroom there since 1991, but Columbia University is not a shithole school. You know, it's one of the premier educational institutions in the world. A major research university that just added a whole brand new science campus very recently. They have to resist, yeah, but they won't. They'll probably say like, well, we want to cooperate. We don't like anti-Semitism. I mean, it's literally like they've declared war on like the Tooth Fairy or something. There's no anti-Semitism at these protests, and these protests are no more. There are no protests for there to be anti-Semitism that wasn't there, and now you're going to go. So what are you subjecting them to oversight for? Why?
Do you think that that's a question that a federal judge is going to ask in the coming days? It has to be.
Well, I mean, assuming that there's a plaintiff in the form of Columbia University's trustees, they have to fight this, right?
Yes.
And they may not. I'm not sure that they will.
Oh my God. Can you imagine the precedent that would set if they didn't fight it?
Well, that's
federal takeover.
That's one advantage of the Ivy League, right? Because the purpose of the Ivy League is they do talk, right? They have it's an actual organization.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, it's not like just sort of like a term. Like if it was like a term for like, you know, elite schools, then say, you know, Stanford would be in it, but it's not. And so
right. That's a good point.
So like, it's an organization. They cooperate on things like they try not to admit too many of the same kids. Like, oh, here at Cornell, we're going to admit John, but maybe you don't admit him, like that. So they collude, and so they've got to be on the phone. These presidents have to be. The presidents don't have any power, though, as we've discovered recently. They used to, but it's all the trustees and the donors who are running everything. So there's got to be a deep division there between sort of the money people and the academic oriented people. That's what Marx called, right, a division in the ruling class. That's the crisis that we're seeing, and I don't know how it plays out, because I don't know what. I'm very worried. Yeah. I could see them not resisting. I could definitely see them resisting lamely, like sort of filing, a request for an emergency injunction. But then I could see the judge saying, it's the Department of Education. They have the right to do this.
But I mean, this is so short-sighted. Don't you think that would then open the door for a president, Pete Buttigieg or whomever, to try to federalize Liberty University, let's say?
Absolutely.
Man, this is dangerous territory.
It's not good. And so I have to know, I would go like in Star Trek, when it's like, when Kirk is like, okay, you want to take over the ship? Fuck off. I'm self-destructing the ship. Yeah. What if Columbia University did the same? You want to take us over? Fine, we'll shut down. We'll just close the doors. We're out of business. Come in. Anyone want to buy some desks? We're out. And I think it would be so shocking it couldn't be ignored. I think that's actually the only proper answer.
Wow.
It's like, we don't have federal control of universities in this country.
No, we don't. Ted, is this all about federal funds?
Well, it's about, Columbia University didn't even get the $400 million back, even though they sucked up to the administration so badly. All they're getting is a seat at the table, which apparently is not a good seat. The way it looks from here, it's looking like a seat with like bird droppings on it, way up high behind the Jumbotron with no view at all. It's a seat you probably don't even want. But yeah, it's about the $400 million. And that's confusing to me. Okay, so as an alum, I know a lot of alums, and a lot of them, like my ex-girlfriend when I was in college, she's rich as shit. She's the head of aviation finance at one of the 3 biggest mega banks in the world. Wow. She and her husband donate tens of millions of dollars to Columbia.
Oh my God.
And Barnard. Now, I know that if she got a call and they said, the Trumpies have fucked us, we're out $400 million. Are you good for $20 million? She and her husband would just write a check. And she's one of tens of thousands like that. What I'm trying to get at is they probably could get the $400 million and more back just by playing the victim. Even I've never donated to Columbia. I have my issues with them. I'm much more likely to donate money to my son's college because they've been very generous to him. And like I'm a single father. I've struggled. They were really understanding and cool, generous financial aid package. But still, if Columbia called me and said that, I'd be like, as underemployed as I am right now, I'll cut you a check. So I think they would have so much sympathy. So the fact that and do they need it really?
Right.
They have a $15 billion. I'm trying to make sure I get this right. Yeah, $15 billion endowment. Now they can't spend that like a piggy bank, granted, but they have it. They can borrow against it. There's all sorts of things they can do. They get a revolving line of credit. That $400 million wasn't going to all come in at once.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? They're not like that. They could hike tuition a little bit. There's things they could do. They could cut the budget, lay off some adjuncts, whatever. They could cut the fat. There is fat there. So why are they not? They're choosing not to. They're choosing to roll here, and this is because there's some of the trustees really believe this anti-Semitism garbage.
Mm-hmm. That's sad, actually. That's sad. People. It's so many people.
It's coming from inside the house. That's
the
problem here.
So many supporters of Israel in this country have been successful at publicly equating support for Palestinian human rights as support for Hamas. It's stunning to me.
I wrote a piece for the Wall Street Journal, which they killed, but whatever, it's indicated, about this, the ADL, which is basically in the hands of this maniac pro-Israel. The ADL was a very respectable organization.
Oh, yeah, it was.
And then this guy, Jonathan Greenblatt, took over. He's the CEO. And even within the ADL, there's been a lot of anger. He redefined all criticism of Israel as anti-Semitism. So if you look at the stat, there's this stat that he put out after October 7th, 2023, where he said, maybe about 6 months later, there's been a 700% increase in anti-Semitic incidents in the U.S. over the last year. Okay, that's, obviously that's catnip for editors, and it's a big story, and it's shocking if true. The problem is that starting on October 7th, he redefined anytime someone called in and said, I saw a sign that said from the river to the sea.
Right.
That's an anti-Semitic incident. All of those have been counted that way. There's no discrete, and they were not counted like that previously. Well, so obviously so obviously you're going to get that spike. If I start counting Blue Jays as terrorists in spring, well, there's going to be a spike in the spring because there's more Blue Jays in the spring. That was it was on purpose. Every media organization, stretched thin, but always lazy to begin with. They're just they dutifully cut and pasted. Oh, the ADL, they're legit. And it's but it's not these numbers are not real. I don't know if there's been an increase in anti-Semitism overall. I would suspect probably, but it's not been 700%. And, we don't know what it is because nobody's keeping reliable statistics. The FBI's hate crimes numbers take a few years to come out, so we don't really know. So that's much more reliable, but that's only about violence. That's not about someone feeling sad because they see a bunch they don't like. So
it reminds me of when you're a little kid and you're like, Mom, he looked at me. That's what this is.
He hurt me. Yeah. It is like that. And and look, I think I've read the arguments for why, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And look, we can and should have that debate, but they don't want that debate. What they want is the Zionist side wants to bully and get their side. They don't want to get buy-in. They don't want to convince anyone. They just want to, there's an argument to be made, and they should probably make it, but they're not. Or maybe they feel like they made it and they lost, but whatever. They're resorting to bullying. And oddly, Trump, with his personal history of, racism and housing and everything, is trying to present himself as the hero of the Jewish people. It's all so bizarre.
It is. It's bizarre. And, I'd like to transition just a little bit if we could. You can't criticize Israel for anything or you're labeled as being anti-Semitic. But then the Israelis attack these ambulance workers, EMTs. They have lied about this attack at literally every step of the way. And there's video of the attack.
Right.
And it's the Israeli press that has been breaking the story and the story's developments.
The Israeli press does yeoman's work. Haaretz does
amazing,
great work in a very insular society. Very brave. So
there are these ambulances driving down the road. Lights are on. They're marked with big red crosses on the.
There's video.
There's video, and the Israelis stop the ambulances, pull everybody out. It was 14 or 15 people, line them up, and execute them, just like the Germans used to do. As an aside, one of my closest friends in the world is also my cousin, Mark Kiriakou. Shout out to Mark. And Mark's dad died recently. He was in his early 90s, but he was shot by the Nazis and had a terrible scar on his gut from when a Nazi soldier shot him. Mark is in the process right now of translating letters that his dad wrote during the period, and just to read about the Nazi occupation of Greece, it's sickening. It's sickening to me. Anyway, much of what
the brutality
these letters describe, the brutality, it's what's happening in Gaza today. You can't line ambulance workers up on the side of the road and execute them. That's what the Nazis did. And then not only did they execute them, but they then dug holes, put the bodies in the holes.
That's what Nazis
and buried the ambulances so nobody would know.
Yeah,
and word got out.
They were in a hurry, and I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's really sad, but also kind of awesome that they didn't search the bodies, because that's how we have the video. One of the cell phones belonging to one of the workers was on the body, and I guess it was night, and they were probably in a hurry to cover things
cover up their genocidal war crime.
Yes, and so, but that's where we know we have where the Israelis claimed there were the vehicles weren't marked, that they had no emergency lights on, but this person, the victim, he was taping, he was videoing his the convoy moving through Gaza, and you can very clearly see everything is not the way the Israelis said, and that's the evidence that has proven. I mean, what do you think the Israelis were? Why'd they do it? I mean, you mentioned the Nazis, and I don't like to give credit to them, but I don't really. And I've read a lot of. I mean, I've read. If I had to carry all the books about Nazism I've read, I couldn't. It's like I don't remember them really targeting, health workers. Kind of. That's not really their. That wasn't really their thing.
That was not a thing for the Nazis. No, you're right.
So why? What are the Israelis? What are they trying to accomplish here? They just didn't want them to respond. They could have just blocked the road and detained them and said, "Get the fuck out of here," or shot.
Yeah.
What was this about?
And to murder them in cold blood like that. And I'd like to know who sanctioned this. How high up does this go?
Right.
Was this a governmental decision? Was this a rogue military unit?
Right. Was this like what was his name in Cali?
Yeah. That's right.
The My Lai
massacre. Yeah. I don't know. It's clearly a war crime.
And the Israelis clearly don't want to account. They don't want to hold anyone accountable for it. I mean, so the conversation one would hope that would be occurring inside the IDF would be sort of like an argument, right? Like, would there at least be someone at the table, some general, hopefully, who would say, yeah, I know these are our guys, and they're fighting these horrible Arabs whom we hate, but still, I mean, this is like, we can't have this. We've got to court-martial them. And it's like, no, everyone, that'll discredit, someone else saying that'll discredit the entire war. The world will hate us even more. The Americans will get pissed. It'll be bad in the media. I mean, but I don't even know if they're having that kind of debate. I mean, you got to judge people by their actions, and their actions are that they're not even throwing even the little fish who usually get court-martialed in situations like this. Nothing's happening.
No, even the fall guy that you would expect. That's right.
The stupid grunt.
That's right. I just don't get this at all. But there's also no outrage from the American government. I'm not aware of any statement that has come from the government. We're seeing coverage in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and elsewhere. But we haven't heard Donald Trump, for example, condemn this war crime. Not a word. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
I don't get it either. What about and also I'm not really seeing the American media hold, during the Nixon years, whenever, Ron Ziegler was the press secretary for part of the Nixon administration. he was so famous for stonewalling that to Ziegler became a verb in the American Heritage Dictionary.
That's right.
I think it's been retired, but to Ziegler, someone was just basically to keep dodging and just not answering the question. But the reporters used to, like, let's say we were both in the White House press corps, and you asked a question that like Ziegler refused to answer, then I would ask the same question, even if I had a different question, because it's just we'd all watch each other's back. And then if like they didn't answer it when I asked it, then it would go to Michelle, and Michelle would ask it, and it would just keep going like that, right? That doesn't seem to have that same. There's no one really holding the feet, the White House feet to the fire. They could go in there in every single briefing, just ask about this.
Yes,
but they don't. They don't.
Nobody will do that. Nobody.
Yeah.
Just awful, shocking.
So
and not shocking at the same time.
Well, yes, it's shocking that it's not shocking. What are we gonna? Is there help? We have the ICC, we have the UN, but basically, nothing will happen, right?
No, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen.
By the way, the audio is absolutely chilling. Where you can the cell phone, you can hear him at one point saying, "Dad, please help me. The Israelis have targeted us."
Oh my God!
And and then you hear the hail of bullets. They go on for 5 minutes on the audio tape, and then and finally the phone goes dead.
Oh my God!
So so in other words, the phone was probably in his pocket.
Yeah.
He hit record, or he just left it recording. And then while the whole thing unfolded, the Israelis, what can I even say? There's nothing.
There's got to be some kind of justice, and there likely won't be.
I know. I also I can't even imagine that this is being widely reported in Israel, because liberal Israelis, they read Haaretz and they're already against the war. But there aren't, and that's probably nowadays. It used to be half and half. Nowadays it's maybe 1 out of 4 Israelis is liberal, I would say. The other 3 out of 4, they're militant. They're so hardened. They just don't care.
No, they don't. They don't care. The last time I was in Israel, I asked an Israeli reporter that I was visiting about that. And he attributed that to the gigantic influx of migrants from Russia and Ukraine, that they were so conservative to the point of irrationality when they moved to Israel, and they moved in such numbers that they were essentially able to take over the electorate and then by extension take over the government. That's amazing to me.
That's actually fascinating.
In part, that's why there's no viable Labor Party anymore. Socialism is dead in Israel. When I was in college, so many of my Jewish friends had spent a summer at a kibbutz, for example. It was like this rite of passage that so many people did.
Yeah.
Nobody even talks about kibbutzes anymore. It's all done. All done.
It's crazy. That's an interesting theory. Demographics is destiny, I think. We should talk a little bit about this attorney in Detroit.
Yeah, this is bad.
It's bad, yeah. So this guy, his name is Amir Makled. Yeah. He was traveling. He went to the Dominican Republic for a spring vacation with his wife and 2 daughters.
Yep.
7 years old. Family man, comes back from the DR. He's a local attorney there in Detroit. He has one somewhat high-profile case. It's this white college girl at University of Michigan at Ann Arbor who was part of the Gaza protests, and he's defending her against presumably whatever charges she's facing related to her role in the protests. He's pulled out of. He presents his passport. He's then told, "Oh, you're going to have to go with this special anti-terrorist task squad." They pull him into an interrogation room, and they hand him a piece of paper that says, "Oh, they say we know you're a high-profile attorney." He's like, "No, I'm not. I'm a local attorney." It's like, well, we need to see your phone. We need to go into your phone and get everything. So at first he says he refuses. He says there's privileged information in there. I'm not giving you the phone. And then they hand him a piece of paper that says, oh, we have the right to take your phone, which I know that's, well, they say that.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I think they basically do have that right. But it's important for people who are watching this and wondering what they should do to know that if your phone is like password protected and like, let's say an iPhone, fairly recent vintage, pretty much they're not going to be able to get in there. So they can take it, but they can't get into it.
And they can keep it.
They can keep, well, I guess they have to return it eventually. I saw a report recently that they kept one guy's phone. He refused to open it up like biometrically, and they kept it for 6 weeks. Yeah, I'd be like, bye phone.
Yep.
I mean, these days with the tariffs, the new one's going to be $3,000.
Right.
But okay, fine. Maybe I'll get a flip phone. It'll probably be good for me. But it'd probably be the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you, ICE, or in this case, BCE, Border and
I'm going to get one of these unplugged phones that I mentioned in the last podcast. They're $1,000 or $900. They're being marketed by Eric Prince, whom I loathe, but that's okay because they've got this feature where if the feds demand that you turn over your phone, you could hit a button and it just zaps everything.
I love that.
I'm doing it.
So I guess the whole thing is like, if you get detained while you're being marched to the detention center, power down your phone.
Yep.
And then you have some power, because otherwise they can hold the phone up to your face and force you.
That's right.
Although you can always deactivate that. You can. You don't have to have that on. People don't realize that.
That's
like you can redo it later. It'll take probably be more accurate in case you change the
right, exactly.
So anyway, so it's good to be prepared. Anyway, they take this guy in, they detain him for a couple of hours, and then finally he negotiates and says, okay, how about if you just look at my contacts? And they say, okay, but then they disappear with his phone. He signs on a legal paper, okay, you have the right to look at my contact. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but they take off with the phone. They took everything. They drained it.
Of course they did. Because the courts allowed them to. This has not yet gone to the Supreme Court, but there have been 2 separate circuit courts of appeals who have said they can take your phone or your laptop or both. Mm-hmm. So the final word isn't in, but as the law stands right now,
that could happen to you anywhere within 100 miles of a
border
with the U.S. Right?
That's right.
And that's like 80% of the country lives within that range, right? Because people live on coasts.
Right.
So you could be driving on Interstate 95 in the Northeast, pulled over in like New Haven and be like, what the fuck is this? New Haven. It's like, are these Connecticut state troopers? No, this could be BC Border and Customs Enforcement.
That's right.
And they could do this to you. They could do that. And there have been some cases like that.
Yes.
Where they've done these checkpoints. So I felt like the undertone when I saw the lawyer being interviewed was he kind of knew he'd been had. He had that sheepish tone.
I got the same impression.
Like, shit.
Yeah.
I mean, look.
I think he was so taken by surprise that he didn't have a minute to get his thoughts together.
That's right. They take advantage of that. And, but I think it's kind of like you have to be like, all right, I'm just not going to give it to you. You got to go. You have to go with the Kiriakou rule.
Yeah,
I'm represented by counsel, and I don't
talk to cops.
Yeah, that is
exactly right.
That's going to be my rule whenever I encounter those assholes.
They eventually give 90% of the time. They just like, fuck you, and then they walk away.
I'm sure. Yeah,
and you don't have to be a dick about it. You just say, look, with all due respect, I'm represented by counsel and I don't talk to cops. And you just repeat it. It might make them a little bit angry, or they'll pretend to be confused. Like, what's this crazy position this person's taking? And then they just walk away.
Yeah.
Because they all think they're the good guys. But yeah, that's what I do. And it works.
Yeah. So, I mean, okay. So we're seeing a very rapid escalation here. Lawyers have always been a protected class in this country. The administration lied and said, we didn't target him. It was like random. That's clearly not true based on what they told him. They told him that he had been targeted. So that's not true. And so, but obviously this is to send a message. You know, my friends say, oh, you don't have to worry. They're just going, they're only interested in these Gaza protests and like, and the people related to them. And I'm like, okay, for now, but you can see the escalation, right? I mean, we're in the Martin Niemöller poem. I just don't know what verse we're at. But the question is not which verse I'm at, but I'm in the poem, and I'm not at the end of the poem. I'm closer to the, you know, I'm between the end of the poem and where the poem is right now.
That's right.
So where do we, you know, I mean, the question is what happens next? What, you know, basically the administration is dipping their toe in to see how cold the water is. So far, it's been bath water. So they can keep doing this, and they will. I mean, they've already gotten major law firms to take the knee. Mm-hmm. So now what? I mean, what do you think their next targets are going to be? Journalists?
Probably, yeah. I would say definitely, actually, not even probably. Journalists and lawyers. If you can cow the lawyers, then you can cow anybody. Mm-hmm. And you know how much journalism is corporate now. I mean, so few Americans read alternative media, so they have nothing to lose.
Yeah, and let's face it, the corporate journalists, you know, it's not Jimmy Breslin anymore, right?
No, it's not.
These aren't hard-bitten, working class.
Jack Anderson, yeah.
Fuck you, I don't give a shit about you. They're not those people.
Nixon talked about assassinating Jack Anderson. Wow. That's how much he hated Jack Anderson's muckraking. But we don't have journalists like that anymore.
I should take pride. What was his name? Oh my God, Alan Keyes. Alan Keyes.
Oh, I remember Alan Keyes.
He went on
he was a nut.
And he said that I should be executed by the U.S. government.
Oh, Senator Kit Bond said that I should be hanged from a tree when I blew the whistle on his torture program. Yeah, I wear that as a badge of honor.
Well, it's all good times until it's dawn.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. So I mean, So I guess the question is, do they go after? I mean, like going with the universities, they didn't go after fucking Reed College. They're going after
Columbia,
the big boys, Harvard, Columbia, Yale. With these law firms, they didn't go after
they went after Perkins Coie. Yeah, they went after the biggest law firms in the world.
Right. So, I mean, it seems to me like, if you kill the king, you own the castle. It's probably their philosophy here. So it seems like maybe you and I are in a little bit less danger than if you're, say, an op-ed writer at the New York Times.
I have to agree. Yeah, I think that's right. Hey, we're running a little bit short on time, but we've got to talk about talks day after tomorrow in Muscat, Oman, between the United States and Iran. Now, Donald Trump said that the talks were going to be direct face-to-face talks. The Iranians said that is not true. They're going to be indirect talks. The U.S. delegation will be in one room, the Iranian delegation will be in another room, and the Omanis are going to be shuttling between the two rooms. I mentioned a couple of days ago, I'm 100% sure that the Iranians are right on this. There won't be direct talks, but talks of any kind are good. Here's the problem. The problem is the Iranians have a demand, and the demand is that they be treated with respect. And Donald Trump doesn't.
How can anyone with respect?
I know, right? And Donald Trump doesn't treat anybody with respect. Yeah. He's going to go in there.
You're asking for something. You're asking for a product I don't have to sell. We're all out.
He's bombastic. He's threatening. He's bullying. And he said that if there is progress, then all's good. If there's not progress, we're going to bomb the shit out of the Iranians, or we may bomb the shit out of the Yemenis, the Houthis, because they're generally viewed as an Iranian cutout. Where do you think this is going?
Or why not bomb Hezbollah again?
For what that's worth, if there even is a Hezbollah that still exists for all intents and purposes. The reason I ask what you think is going to be accomplished is because we've not seen any indication in any media that there's an agenda.
Right.
So what are we going to just stare at each other?
That's a good question, right? It's sort of like, it's like a date where there's no agenda. It's like, it's like we're doing 6-minute dating. We'll see if we like the cut of each other's jib. Maybe we'll go home together. Maybe not. Whatever. Maybe there is a secret agenda. Maybe it's just, or maybe it's to meet in order just to feel each other out and just sort of see. I mean, look, I'm sure the Iranians are serious. They're serious people, and they're always, and their government's always serious.
And they don't agree to talks lightly. Mm-hmm. They held off the Biden administration seemingly forever because they were burned by Trump 1 in that he immediately withdrew from the JCPOA, and the Biden people weren't offering, automatic reentry into the JCPOA.
I mean, the problem with, Trump and his ADD presidency is that even if his heart's in the right place and he's like, I really want to normalize relations with Iran. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's dealing with Russia. He's trying to take over Columbia University. He's got so much on his plate. How does he focus? And this Iran thing, there's a lot of components, a lot of moving parts. And Iran is, as the ultimate country with a Byzantine governmental structure, with overlapping structures, several, like 4 to 5 discrete overlapping sort of all of them. And it's kind of hard. You can't just make a handshake deal like with the dictator of Turkmenistan. Like if he says it, it's done. It's not like that with the Iranians. No. So it's not a dictatorship at all.
It's not. And Hillary Clinton once famously called it not a theocracy, but a military dictatorship, that the IRGC, the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps, controls every aspect of the Iranian government and economy. And that is not true.
Not even a little bit true.
Not even a little bit.
Right.
It's a democracy, whether we like it or not.
It's disturbing that I always like to say there's more political cartoonists working at newspapers in Tehran in their very vibrant press than in the entire United States of America. So, my personal canary in the coal mine. So it disturbs me that she was ever Secretary of State, but I can say that about so many of them recently. I'd like something good to come out of it. I mean, should we read anything into, is it related, the fact that Russia and the United States were able to have a prisoner swap recently? I mean, and that apparently the talk is that the U.S. State Department and their Russian counterparts are, in the foreign ministry are trying to normalize relations with Russia. I'm not really sure normalization is really the right word, because we never severed diplomatic relations. And normally when you normalize, you de-sever them. But this would be like, I guess, about getting rid of sanctions and, that kind of, I think I need.
Hey, okay. Sorry, my computer went down just on its own. I don't know what the heck happened.
That can happen. Okay, let me. So it's really funny. There's you're in the little square now. Let's see if I can fix this. All right, that's because I think you're on the phone.
Yeah, I'm on a phone.
All right, there's nothing much I can do. So you're skinny.
Sorry about that.
It's like, remember on TV when they used to show the 70 millimeter movies and they were squished and everyone was like, really tall?
Right. I do.
So anyway, all right. So I guess you probably didn't hear what I was saying, but should we read? I mean, is there reason for optimism for the U.S.-Iran talks in the fact that Russia and the U.S. are apparently trying to normalize relations? These talks that resulted in the recent prisoner swaps, basically, and normalize relations, I don't think is the right word, because we'd never severed them. But
the Iranians did, though.
But I'm talking
about Russia.
Russians.
Yeah. You're right. Improving.
I literally biked by the U.S. consulate today before the show, and it's
the Russian embassy here in Washington is up and running every single day.
Yeah, there's some weird protesters out in front. I didn't even know what they were. I zipped by. But anyway, I guess the question is, if they're if the Trump administration's posture is basically like, generally speaking, we're open for business. Marco Rubio, we'll send little Marco over to talk to you guys or his people. Mm-hmm. I mean, that seems to be where they're at, right?
Yeah.
For the time.
I think it is. And, you know, I have to
talk to anyone but Columbia University.
Yeah, that's right. And I have to think that Steve Wyckoff is not stupid. That these talks, U.S.-Russia talks and U.S.-Iran talks are not exclusive of one another. That there has to be a bigger idea behind it. And so...
And what is that idea?
That we really can normalize relations with countries that have been deemed to be enemy countries, even if that normalization is solely related to trade. You know, we can end the war between Russia and Ukraine. We can lower the temperature in U.S.-Iran relations, and everybody ends up being happy or semi-happy and maybe making some money. And remember, I said this day before yesterday, but I'll say it again.
It's all about money.
And Donald Trump is obsessed with winning the Nobel Peace Prize.
Mm-hmm.
The North Korea thing didn't work out for him. You notice we're not even pretending to try to talk to the North Koreans, despite the love letters from 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if this is about Donald Trump's legacy.
Yeah, because if it's just like with North Korea, there'd be something for him to win Nobel-wise if there were a crisis, but there isn't.
Yes, there isn't. No.
So yeah, it's not just about like making things good again. It's got to be about fixing a war. I would think that the Russian thing would be low-hanging fruit for him.
Yeah, that's an easy one. I agree. You just beat up on Zelensky until he finally agrees. He finally agrees to give up territory in exchange for peace.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Peace in our time.
Yeah, I think that's it. But Iran, I mean, this could turn into something big if Donald Trump is actually serious about pursuing some sort of normalization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, the Iran thing is long overdue. The whole thing is stupid. There's a lot of money to be made with, but apparently at the same time, our relationship with China is obviously shit.
It's bad. Yeah, it's bad. Definitely.
The Chinese are really pissed.
Yeah.
This isn't posturing for them anymore.
No, definitely not.
And, I think they feel picked on. I mean, I think from their point of view,
singled out.
They haven't been militarily expansionist. They have been playing by all the rules. They've converted over to capitalism, just the way we always said we wanted them to. We're probably regretting that now. We outsourced. They did what we wanted. We're like, please take our dirty industries, which we don't want anymore. We're deindustrializing. You take them. We're going to outsource them. They were like, okay. We did everything that was out. And it's like, they did everything that was asked of them. They made some money in the process. And now that their economy's a little weak, we're beating up on them.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly right.
We're kicking them when they're down. And they're not liking it. I wouldn't either.
No, I wouldn't either. But, I wonder, too, if the Chinese have calculated that they can handle this kind of conflict longer than we can. Mm-hmm. And I went to the Treasury Department.
They only need to wait 3 years.
Yeah, right. They would have to wait.
I don't think President Vance would continue this policy.
I don't either. I don't think anybody would.
No.
125%, 140% tariffs. Come on, man. They could absolutely cripple our economy if they wanted to. They're the second or third largest holder of government bonds, treasury bonds.
Yeah, and let's face it, we have the trifecta of financial misery right now. Never have I seen, I used to work on Wall Street. Never have I seen stock market go down at the same time as treasury bonds and notes.
You're exactly right.
At the same time as the dollar collapsed.
Yes.
Those last two are where you go when equities go tits up.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So and what's that about? It's because everyone thinks that we're run by a madman, and so they're running away screaming. the euro is doing surprisingly well, despite all of their problems over there.
The Greek prime minister made a statement yesterday that Donald Trump seized on. The prime minister, Kiriakou Mitsotakis, he's a conservative. He's been prime minister for a long time, since 2019. And he's in his second term right now. But he told Kathimerini, which is the New York Times partner newspaper in Athens, that this situation with the tariffs, this is not the crisis that many people think it is. This was Donald Trump's demand that everybody sit down, literally everybody in the world sit down and negotiate better trade deals. He said, look, Donald Trump is right. There has been a trade imbalance. If I were the American president, I wouldn't want these imbalances, in favor of China or in favor of South Korea or in favor of Japan, for example, or Germany. I would want something that was fairer to my people. And Trump said, well, I know him. He's a very wise man, and he's right. And so the Greeks are kind of perplexed, like, well, what do we make of this? Donald Trump just complimented the prime minister. We're not sure we like that. but I think he's probably right.
Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing, right? It's sort of like, I don't know if you had this feeling when you first took economics, probably like me in high school the first time, forcibly, definitely one of my favorite subjects, so boring. And I was a very avid student. But like when the idea of the trade deficit, I was like, what is it? Like, why is it a concern? I understand why.
Why are we worried about this?
I understand why national debt is a problem, but why do you care? I mean, it's like I have a trade deficit in my favor with the New York Times. They buy my things sometimes. I never, I don't pay that much for the paper. Are they being screwed? I don't really think so. That's not really. Or, Lesotho, whose name I mispronounced, and I know you pronounce correctly.
Lesotho.
Lesotho.
Only because I knew a woman from Lesotho. That's the only reason I know how to say it.
You knew the woman from Lesotho.
Yeah, the one woman.
So Lesotho is like, okay, so it's not like the U.S. suffered from the fact that we bought probably handicrafts primarily from there.
I heard it was raw textiles.
Textiles, right.
Yeah.
So we're buying a lot of textiles, raw material, but that's all, I mean, they don't have the money to buy stuff from us, so we can't sell them Lexuses or whatever. Not that those are ours. So, like, I mean, how does that harm us? So it's sort of like, I mean, a trade imbalance, I guess, writ large, if you're always have a trade, you don't produce anything, then your GDP ultimately is going to drop, and then it'll be a problem. But sort of country by country, it doesn't really matter, right? Is that basically right?
Right. Yeah, right. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't.
I don't even know if they should have ever talked about it. It's one of those metrics that it's sort of like, it's sort of like the cholesterol numbers that they made too much of. It's like, actually, cholesterol's not for most people really a big deal. You can just eat some eggs if you can afford them. It doesn't really matter.
Right. Exactly.
So probably we should have just been told, like, don't worry about it.
Yeah. No, it's no big deal.
So we're going to be watching all these stories. We'll see. This is our last show for this week. We'll do one. We'll be back next week with a couple of shows, I'm sure. We're going to be doing. We're going to see what happened in Muscat over the weekend with the Iranians.
Yep.
That's a process. That's going to be.
It sure is.
It's going to be. It'll take some time. The Russians might be a little faster, maybe.
I suspect they will be. Yes.
And I mean, when can we start seeing? I guess the next step will be sanctions coming down, right?
Fingers crossed. Trump has twice spoken about reducing or eliminating sanctions, but he always ties it to progress, at least with regard to a ceasefire. So the proposal's out there. It's on the table. Right.
And I guess I don't know if anyone's telling Putin, like, I'm sure he has smart advisors that are, but I think he has smarter advisors than Trump does, telling him, like, the American president's getting impatient. and you have an opportunity here with him that you might not have in the future. If I were the Russians, I'd jump on this.
Yeah.
You know.
Agreed.
So, and you know, Trump is battling the neocons in his own party. So he is. I do give him credit for that. And then we'll see what happens with this the Columbia University thing that just started at the beginning of the show. And I mean, I'm so ashamed. You know, I'm class of '91, roar lion roar. Fuck those guys.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just crazy.
Wow. All right.
I hope they don't buckle.
Yeah. I think the only way out is the poison pill.
Yeah.
Like, we'll close. It's like, you can't do that. Watch us. I mean, and a school can close and reopen. Antioch College in my hometown of Dayton, Ohio, just Yellow Springs, just east of Dayton, they closed and reopened. And you know, you can. I mean, you know.
Okay, good. That's a strategy then.
There would be an outcry, massive. Maybe just like, well, you know, we're going to graduate our kids May 15th. That's graduation day. You know, if you don't have your diploma yet, you might want to transfer somewhere else. We're closing our doors. I mean, the political. I mean, can you imagine Mayor Adams here in New York? It would be like, what? I mean, New York, Columbia University is the second largest landowner in New York City. I mean, it's a massive contributor to the economy. I mean, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. All right.
Good luck to them.
With that, I guess we will consider everyone to have been sufficiently deprogrammed for now. But
thanks for joining us, everybody.
So much that you have to be deprogrammed for. You have to come back. Thanks everyone for checking us out. Follow us on the socials and all that. Please subscribe. Please share. Please promote it. We're independent. We're trying to make this work financially. You know, maybe we'll have a big backer in the future, but for the time being, we really need your help, or, you know, we can't do it forever. So thanks everyone.
Indeed. Thank you.
Bye.